So now, in Judaism, along with the idea of the apocalypse, the earth-shattering end of times, there's the idea of the Messiah. Now, those of you who have studied this a bit know there's no easy comporting of Messiah theory and end of times theory, because if you look in the Bible, there really are two different things. So the Mashiach, which in Hebrew means the anointed one was understood to be something like a descendant of David who would be anointed. Remember, Israelite kings were not crowned, they were anointed. So anointed, in a sense, means anointed by God to be the political ruler. That the anointed one would establish a kingdom of truth and justice. So from that perspective, the Messiah does not have to be a supernatural being. It could actually be just a living descendant of David. In fact, some people think that in the prophecy of Isaiah, that Hezekiah was someone that Isaiah knew, was going to be this anointed king. Some people think it was Josiah, who in the Bible is described as the greatest king of Israel that ever lived. This is in the book of 2 Kings. So we're not even sure that Messiah actually meant something at the end of time, something supernatural. But in general, when you think of Mashiach, think of Mashuach, anointed by God to lead, to establish a political reality that would establish truth and justice, meaning a political reality that would be right with God. Now, once end of times thinking is fully developed, that there's going to be this apocalyptic catastrophe, and messianic thinking come together, they get merged in a way that the Messiah and the apocalypse come at the same time. So the Messiah now becomes something of a supernatural being that will, as it were, announce or be a herald of the end of times and lead either all of humanity or some of humanity into penitence, to be right with God, while the rest of humanity perhaps was destroyed. Now, how do we know this? If you look in the one of the ways, if you look in the New Testament, when Jesus is baptized by John the Baptist, already John the Baptist seems to be saying that the end of times has come. You have to get right with God, come and repent, and be baptized in the river Jordan. Now, this is, remember, it's an odd thing that Jesus has to get baptized by John the Baptist, because if Jesus is already, as it were, God, you would think that it would be Jesus would be doing the baptizing, not John the Baptist. But it just tells you, for scholars of the New Testament, if you look at the New Testament, there are 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Matthew, Mark, and Luke do not seem to have a theory of Jesus that he's God. You have it in John, but not Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Matthew, Mark, and Luke don't know quite what Jesus is yet. They're probably written no later than around the year 70. And John comes in probably 20, 30 years later when Christianity already developed into a very separate religion from Judaism. So I want you to try to imagine in the 1st century CE, there's a large group of spiritually devoted people who believe that humanity in general is not right with God, that they're depraved, that the Jews are not right with God. Now, this is not about Jews, by the way, in particular, but this has been a constant theme ever since the time of the, when the Dead Sea community came into being. I mean, some of you know that we call the Dead Sea community, which are oftentimes called the Qumran community, was actually several different generations of people, and most of them were refugees, and probably priestly refugees from Jerusalem. And why did they flee Jerusalem and go out and establish this very, very ascetic community in the desert? Because Jerusalem wasn't good enough for them. Because the priest in the temple, they thought, were depraved, that they weren't doing things right. They had the wrong calendar, the wrong teaching, they were doing everything wrong. So, what do you happen if your synagogue's not doing things right? You break away and you create your own synagogue. I think we've seen that a few times ourselves in our lifetimes, right? And the idea is we're going to break away from those depraved people over there, and we're going to found our own synagogue. And actually, someone did a study of new synagogues, and there's a time when almost every new synagogue had the word tzedek in its name. Beit Tzedek, we're the righteous ones, not like those depraved people over there. We have established a true righteous house of God. So the idea that people don't like the religiosity of the previous place, and they can do it far better in a far purer way, is something that is probably as old as humanity. So they go down to the Dead Sea, they create their community, and it's a highly, highly purified community. They live in great ritual purity. In fact, sometimes they're actually celibate. because they understood the body, the corporeal nature to be the source of our depravity. And so that if you became fully celibate, not having sexual relations, you did not involve yourself in that kind of impurity. It's been often noted that celibacy might be great for purity, but it's not good for creating a new generation of people that might be interested in purity. But for whatever reasons, the Qumran community is not fully established, and it's only since the 1940s and 50s that we're getting a really good picture of who these people were with the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls.